Lyra Ashwood grew up hearing the same words again and again: weak, broken, cursed. She was the only wolf in her pack, and maybe in 3 generations, who could not fully change into her wolf form. When other wolves ran under the moon, their bodies became smooth and powerful. Lyra's body only changed halfway. Paws grew where her hands should be. Patches of fur spread unevenly across her skin. Then the pain would come, sharp and burning, and she would fall before the change was ever finished. The elders of the pack said her mother's blood must have been tainted. They said it quietly at first, then more openly as the years passed. The younger wolves laughed when she limped back from the training grounds, her body aching, her pride hurt more than her bones. Even her own brother, Dorian, looked away when she failed in front of others. He never defended her. He never explained why. He simply looked away, as if watching her struggle was too uncomfortable for him to bear. Lyra stopped waiting for anyone to defend her. She stopped hoping that one day the pack would see her differently. Instead, she found her own quiet way to keep going. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, she walked to an old ravine behind a broken mill at the edge of the territory. No one went there. No one would see her fail, and no one would see her try again. She ran along the ravine until her lungs burned and her legs shook. She practiced against a worn wooden dummy until her knuckles split and bled. She pushed her half-formed body to do things the pack said a broken wolf could never do. She was not training to prove herself to anyone. She had given up on that a long time ago. She trained because stopping felt like agreeing with everything they said about her, and she refused to agree. Years passed this way. Lyra built a strength that no one in the pack noticed, because no one bothered to look. She grew quiet, careful, and observant. She learned to read the moods of the pack before anyone spoke. She learned when to stay silent, and when a single word could save her from more mockery. In some ways, being overlooked gave her a strange kind of freedom. No one expected anything from her, so no one questioned where she went, or what she did with her mornings. Then came the season of the Blood Moon Accord, a ceremony that took place only once every 10 years. Every pack in the north had to gather and prove its strength before the ruling Alpha King. Packs that failed to show strength risked losing their territory, their protection, and sometimes their freedom. It was the most important event in a decade, and Lyra's pack had been preparing for months. The pack leaders wanted everything to look perfect when the Alpha King arrived. They wanted strong wolves, disciplined wolves, wolves who could shift cleanly and stand tall under the moon. Lyra did not fit this picture. Days before the ceremony, the pack leader called her into his study. He did not raise his voice. He simply told her that she would stay inside during the king's visit. She was to remain out of sight in the cellar beneath the main hall until the ceremony ended. Lyra did not argue. She had learned long ago that arguing changed nothing. She only asked one question. She asked why she deserved to be hidden away like something shameful. The pack leader did not answer. He simply looked at her the way everyone always looked at her, and left the room. On the night of the ceremony, wolves from every corner of the northern territories gathered on the ceremony grounds. Torches lit the open field. Guards in dark cloaks stood near the edges, watching everything with sharp, careful eyes. At the center of it all stood the Alpha King, a man named Kael Draven. He was known across every territory as a leader who had never bowed to anyone in 200 years. His presence alone was enough to silence a room. While the ceremony began above, Lyra sat alone in the cellar. She could hear muffled sounds through the floorboards, footsteps, distant voices, the low hum of nervous energy. She wrapped her arms around her knees and told herself this was nothing new. She had been left out before. She would survive being left out again. But the moon that night did not follow the old calendars. It rose early, 3 full hours ahead of schedule, catching every pack completely unprepared. Wolves who were only halfway through their evening routines were suddenly forced into transformation without warning. Chaos spread across the ceremony grounds. Half-shifted wolves stumbled in front of the king's own guard, embarrassing leaders who had spent months preparing for this exact night. Deep in the cellar, Lyra felt the pull of the moon hit her all at once. It moved through her body like fire spreading under her skin. She had spent years fighting this feeling, forcing her body to obey rules it never wanted to follow. She had tried so hard, for so long, to become something she was told she should be. This time, exhausted and worn down by years of trying, she did not fight it. She let go. What happened next was nothing like the broken, half-shifted form the pack expected from her. It was not even the clean gray wolf shape her brother wore with such ease. Instead, something ancient stirred inside her, a shape spoken of only in old stories passed down by elders who barely believed the tales themselves. Her fur turned a burning silver white, glowing faintly, even in the darkness of the cellar. Her eyes shifted into something like glowing embers, deep and steady. This was the Moonfire form, a shape so rare that most wolves lived and died without ever seeing one with their own eyes. The cellar door could not hold her. She broke through it without effort and stepped out into the night air, moving toward the ceremony grounds. The moment she appeared, every conversation stopped. Wolves who had spent years mocking her stumbled backward in shock. Her brother, Dorian, dropped to his knees without meaning to, some old instinct in his blood, recognizing what stood before him even before his mind understood it. Chaol Draven, who had not shown surprise in longer than anyone could remember, went completely still. As a young pup, he had heard stories about the Moonfire form from the oldest wolves in his territory. They said it appeared only in wolves who had been broken again and again, wolves whose bodies had refused every easy path and built their own instead through sheer will and endless effort. He had never expected to witness one, and he certainly never expected to find it standing in a pack that had spent years hiding this very wolf in a cellar. He stepped forward, moving past his own stunned guards, and did something no one in the north had ever seen him do. He lowered his head toward her, an Alpha King showing respect to an Omega his own inspection notes had described only weeks earlier as weak and non-functional. The pack elders began stumbling over explanations, trying to apologize, trying to excuse years of cruelty in a single breath. Chaol did not look at them. He kept his eyes on Lyra as she slowly began to shift back into her human form, breathless, shaking, and for the first time in her entire life, not shaking from shame. He spoke loudly enough for everyone on the ceremony grounds to hear him clearly. He told them that they had called her broken for years, but he called her the rarest wolf he had witnessed in 2 centuries. He told her that her pack no longer had any right to keep her hidden away, and he asked her to walk beside him. Lyra stood there for a long moment, looking at the faces around her. She saw shame on some. She saw fear on others. She saw her brother still on his knees, unable to meet her eyes even now. None of it felt as heavy as she once thought it would. She had spent so many years imagining this exact moment, imagining proving them all wrong, and now that it had finally arrived, she realized she did not need their approval anymore. She only needed to keep walking forward. She stepped past the pack elders without a single word and walked toward the king. The guards parted to let her through, their earlier doubt replaced with quiet respect. As she reached Chaol's side, he studied her carefully, not with pity, but with genuine curiosity, as if trying to understand how someone could endure so much and still find the strength to become something so powerful. He asked her how long she had trained alone in secret. She told him about the ravine behind the old mill, about the mornings spent running until her legs gave out, about the wooden dummy she had used, until her knuckles bled. She had never told anyone these details before, not even her own family, because no one had ever asked. Chaol listened without interrupting, and for the first time, Lyra felt like her effort actually mattered to someone. By the time the sun began rising the next morning, word had already spread through every northern territory. Messengers carried the story from pack to pack, some exaggerating details, others repeating it exactly as it happened. The broken girl from the Ashwood pack had transformed into a Moonfire wolf directly in front of the Alpha King, and instead of dismissing her, he had chosen her to stand beside him, not as a curiosity to display, but as an equal. The pack that had spent years mocking her now stood quietly at the base of the hill, watching the king's convoy prepare to leave. Lyra sat inside one of the carriages, wrapped in a warm cloak someone from the king's guard had offered her without being asked. She looked out through the small window one final time. She saw her old home growing smaller in the distance, the same walls that had once held so much of her pain, now shrinking into nothing more than a memory. She did not look back a second time. The following weeks brought changes Lyra never imagined for herself. She trained with the king's own guards, wolves who had spent decades mastering their skills. At first, some of them doubted her, whispering among themselves about her strange history. But doubt did not last long once they saw how she moved, how disciplined she remained even during the hardest exercises, how she never once complained, despite years of training completely on her own. Chaol watched her progress closely, though he rarely said much about it directly. He was not a man who gave easy praise, but Lyra began to notice small signs of respect in the way he included her in important discussions, the way he asked for her opinion during pact negotiations, the way he trusted her judgment even when others in his court hesitated to speak so openly around him. One evening, several months after the ceremony, Chaol asked her why she had never given up during all those years of training alone. Lyra thought about the question carefully before answering. She told him that giving up would have meant agreeing with everyone who called her broken, and she had never truly believed that about herself, even during her darkest moments. She simply needed time, and space, and the freedom to grow at her own pace, away from eyes that only saw her failures. Chaol nodded slowly, understanding something in her answer that went far beyond wolves and moons and ancient forms. He told her that true strength rarely looked the way people expected it to look. Sometimes it appeared exactly on schedule, exactly as predicted. But sometimes it grew quietly in the dark, shaped by years of struggle no one else ever witnessed, until one night, under an unexpected moon, it finally revealed itself completely. Lyra never returned to her old pack as the same person who once hid in a cellar out of shame. She returned only once, months later, not to seek revenge or recognition, but to see her brother one final time. Dorian met her outside the pack's boundary lines, unable to fully meet her eyes even then. She did not ask him to apologize. She only told him that she hoped he would learn, someday, not to look away from people, simply because their struggles made him uncomfortable. Then she turned and walked back toward the life she had built for herself, a life earned entirely through her own effort, no longer defined by a title she never asked for, but shaped instead by everything she had endured and everything she had chosen to become. The moon rose steadily above her that night, calm and familiar, no longer something she feared, but something she finally understood completely as a part of who she truly was.